Hello, my name is Raymond Piller. This is my LTEC 6800 presentation of assignment 3. I will not be able to attend this meeting, and I've made several iterations of this and have gone way over 5 minutes. So I'm going to try and go really fast on this one and try and keep it close to 5 minutes. So I have until 1816. Um, this is a presentation of Newton's Oasis. I basically designed an MMO based on a futuristic level of humanity, where basically imagination is the limit on what this game can do. Um, that actually was a hindrance in my design process because your imagination is the limit. It really made it hard to hone in on what this game actually can do and what it can accomplish. So there was a lot of vagueness left in my document, and I didn't like that at all. But it is what it is, and this is what I came up with. And about three-quarters of the way through, I said I probably shouldn't have picked an MMO, but I did. So it's what I got. So that's what I'll be presenting on. And so my initial target audience was really to include everybody. Why exclude? And I do realize that the educational process and the learn and the abilities and the ability to play games for an elementary school student K through 5 and even maybe a little bit higher than that are very different from those of someone in high school and in the university level of education. Um, um, Apologies, I have some congestion I'm getting over. Um, Subject areas are basically, once again, anything. I just chose stream as a definition of that because it's a common term that people know. But basically, you can scope that out to wherever you want. And once again, it covers anything. So I struggle a lot with exactly what learning standards should be addressed in this game because realistically, when I go, can I get more detail a little bit later? The game design can be done at a per quest level, and so the game itself is more of a framework. Think of it like Second Life or Minecraft, where creators, world developers, or even in our case, educators can create an environment, but they already have the framework in place to create an environment geared towards education. And so really there is no limit. And so when they design a quest, when educators design a quest, they should be supplying the standards. And so I was trying to figure out standards, and I just realized that once again there's no limit. It's really hard to scope this thing because there's no limit. The goal of the game, and I already kind of touched on this, was to provide this user space. So as an MMO, I wanted to, create leveling as part of the, leveling up process. Level 1 through 60 or whatever the levels go to. But then how do you do that with something that's so broad scoped and not combat based like most MMOs are developed? I'm a soldier and I understand combat can be a necessity, but that doesn't mean we should be teaching it to our young students, our young people. And so it shouldn't be included as a basis for advancement. And so I didn't want to include that. And I touched on that. Storyline is human race has gotten really advanced. It's found a wormhole network just outside the solar system, which is the solar system Earth is in, and we have spread to the infiniteness that is the universe. And then the wormhole system collapsed, and we lost the ability to return to Earth. And for those areas that were not as well established, they lost the ability to gain supply, access to the supply channels they once had, and they're now forced to survive on their own. So with technology in hand, you're having to basically relearn everything. And so that's the premise of the game. And I created basically 5 races. Now the races weren't, I'm gonna have to speed up. The races weren't strictly, like black, white, oriental. It's the basically that mix of what we know as races can be a Shiksyr or a Dudine as shown on the screen, and that's fine. It's just a way of thinking. It's like a social socioeconomic situation for that race, and it's just a group of people who decide to band together and form an alliance more than anything else. I call them races here, but it could be termed many different things, a faction, if you will. So one of the things that I want to focus on real quick is the way you advance. And so I did think like in the K through 5 or younger kids that a quest might involve just finding some dyes in the wild like blueberries or whatever, and mixing those with other um, other dyes to produce colors used for things, paint, whatever the case might be. You may have to scavenge some ingredients found from the environment, so you need to learn where those ingredients might exist. But more importantly, the exact quantities might be derived from a word problem. So like all of a sudden math word problems become practical, right? Creating, you might learn about some genetic creation or genetic passive and recessive gene traits by breeding plants, and on top of that you might anything else, survival tactics, whatever the case might be. Um, but basically anything. The world's still, your imagination is your limit on this one. I won't go too much into the details of the environment, but I will kind of skim over this. You'll see that I've expanded math out quite a bit, but the other ones I left, very basic, and that's because I didn't have time. Like how are you going to expand this out to the infiniteness that is our education, our global education? And so I left a very, strict framework, but I didn't, I expanded math to show it can go in very in depth if you wanted to. It is MMO, so unlimited players, duration. You would want to accomplish something within a couple of hours of gameplay, to accomplish something every night or at least within 2 nights. But, essentially this would be a lifelong game, right? Like the duration of the game could last your entire education's, career or, beyond if you decide to pursue it beyond. And for cognition, any MMO is going to require lots of cognition ability and lots of ability to remember things, and be able to think critically and make decisions based on the environment, and creativity with art and world building skills, architecture, the whole nine yards. And so lots of um, psychomotor skills involved in this game. Um, Once again, content integration, I basically already touched on it, but there's a framework would have to be provided to allow a professor, an educator, to create content without needing to program a massive environment. They'll actually just need to create the content and call it good. A lot like a PowerShell. I'm sorry, PowerPoint would be created, and you can load a template, or you can start from scratch and like build your transitions and all that jazz as complex as you want to, or you can keep it as simple as you want to and use a template. Um, Assessment would be done both in game and out of game. Ideally, you'd be able to earn certifications and stuff like that to this game, but that's, it would be based on real world education, so why not, right? Um, One of the biggest challenges, like I already touched on, was just the scope. There's so much involved in creating this game that we would actually have to, in order to create this, we'd have to enlist on like the expertise of the world. It would literally require to build something in quantum physics. I'm not qualified for that. Most of you aren't qualified for that, I'm sure, right? And so how do we fine tune that? We have to go talk to the people who know it, and they have to volunteer or get paid for that time, um, to actually develop this system so that more people can become interested and acquainted with quantum physics. Once again, I already kind of added some reflection, but the gist of my reflection was that this was way too big of a scope. If I were to do this again, I wouldn't pick an MMO. I would pick a more fine-tuned audience. I wish I had a conversation with the professor before going into this and saying, "Here's my idea. What do you think?" Um, I probably should have done that, and maybe she would have told me that, your scope's a bit broad. You're gonna have problems defining everything, and I did. I suffered for it. But that's my presentation. I'm over my my past by a few minutes, so I'm gonna go and wrap this up. But thank you for your time, and I appreciate you listening. Have a good day.